Let's be honest with ourselves for a moment. We don't just wake up one day and find distance in our relationship. It's not a thief that sneaks in during the night. It's a slow drift, unnoticed, ignored, and tolerated until one day you wake up and feel like strangers in the same room. It happens when "How was your day?" becomes "I'm tired." When "Let's talk" turns into "Maybe tomorrow." When the silence between you feels heavier than the words ever did. Distance in relationships rarely arrives like a storm. It doesn't knock the door down and announce its presence. Instead, it creeps in quietly. Subtle, almost invisible at first. One day, you're laughing together, finishing each other's sentences, and then somehow, over time, the silence grows louder than the connection you once shared. It's not sudden. It's slow. It's patient. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. It begins with small moments that feel unimportant. You're tired after a long day, so you don't ask about theirs. They seem distracted, so you don't push. A small disagreement goes unresolved because you both don't want to fight. So you pretend it didn't happen, and then it happens again and again. The pile grows. What was once light and manageable becomes heavy, and without realizing it, you both start withdrawing, not out of malice, but out of routine. This is how distance is born. Not in betrayal, but in absence. Not in anger, but in avoidance. We often underestimate the power of the small things. A look held a second longer, a hand reached across the table. A question that says, "I still care." These are the things we think we'll always do. But the truth is, they're the first to disappear when life gets overwhelming. And when those moments vanish, so does the emotional glue that holds people together. Silence becomes more comfortable than speaking up. Numbness replaces conflict. And slowly, the relationship shifts from intimacy to coexistence. The most heartbreaking part is that both people usually feel it. They just don't know how to name it. They tell themselves it's just a phase. They convince themselves they're just busy, tired, stressed. And maybe that's true. But the relationship doesn't understand excuses. It only understands presence, or the lack of it. And when silence becomes the norm, when check-ins become rare, when real conversation becomes optional, the relationship starts to wither. Even if you're still physically together, there's a moment in every relationship when one or both partners feel the weight of the distance. Sometimes it's when they realize they haven't laughed together in weeks. Other times, it's when one reaches for connection and the other doesn't notice. These moments are opportunities, not proof that it's over, but reminders that something needs tending. Yet too often, we ignore these signals. We hope things will magically fix themselves. But distance never shrinks on its own. It only grows if left unchecked. What makes this so painful is that most people don't mean to drift. They love each other. They just stop showing it. They stop prioritizing it. Life gets in the way, and slowly, love starts getting pushed to the background, not because it doesn't matter, but because it doesn't feel urgent, until it's almost gone. That's the trap of emotional distance. It fools you into thinking there's time, but every day that passes in silence is a day further from connection. Rebuilding begins with awareness, with noticing that the silence has grown, with choosing to lean in rather than wait. It doesn't require grand gestures or perfect words. It requires presence, courage, willingness to say, something feels off and I don't want to lose us. That single act of honesty can interrupt the pattern. Because distance isn't the end, it's a sign, a warning, a whisper that says, don't wait too long. It's never about how far apart you've grown. It's about whether you're still willing to reach across the gap. Because while distance grows in silence, connection grows in intention. And the sooner you speak, the sooner you begin to rebuild what was never really lost. Just forgotten. Avoidance can feel like protection. It offers comfort in the moment, shielding us from discomfort, confrontation, or vulnerability. When something doesn't feel right in a relationship, the instinct to pull back, stay quiet, or pretend everything is fine can feel safer than naming what hurts. We tell ourselves that silence is peace, that not rocking the boat is the mature thing to do. But in truth, avoidance is not safety. It is slow erosion. It is a quiet collapse disguised as calm. We avoid honesty because it comes with risk. Being honest means we have to be seen. We have to say what we feel. Even if we're not sure how it will be received, it might trigger conflict. It might make the other person uncomfortable. It might make us vulnerable to rejection. So instead, we hold back. We swallow the questions, ignore the tension, downplay our needs. We tell ourselves that keeping the peace is better than speaking our truth. But peace without honesty is not connection, it's performance. Over time, avoidance builds a wall. Every moment we choose silence over honesty, we add another brick. That comment we didn't make, that feeling we didn't express, that conversation we postponed again and again. And slowly, the space between two people grows. They may still share a bed, a home, even a life, but emotionally they are drifting apart. And neither one fully understands why. What's dangerous about avoidance is that it's not loud. It doesn't crash like betrayal. It doesn't scream like anger. It whispers. It hides behind politeness and half smiles. It looks like, I'm fine, when you're not. It sounds like it's no big deal when it is. It pretends to be strength, but it's actually fear of what might happen if the truth comes out. But truth, as uncomfortable as it may be, is the only path back to intimacy. It is the oxygen that relationships need to breathe. Without it, resentment begins to grow in the dark. Misunderstandings pile up. One person feels unseen. The other feels unappreciated. The connection thins out until it feels like a thread instead of a bond. And by the time both people realize how far they've drifted, it can feel impossible to find the way back. Avoidance also feeds assumptions. When we don't express what we feel, we start to fill in the blanks ourselves. They don't care. They're pulling away. They wouldn't understand. But those assumptions are rarely accurate. They are projections built in silence and grown in isolation. And without honest conversation to challenge them, they start to feel like facts. The tragedy is that most relationships don't end in one explosive moment. They end in 1,000 little ones. Each time we say nothing when something needs to be said. Each time we turn away instead of toward. Each time we pretend it doesn't matter when it actually does. Choosing honesty doesn't mean causing harm. It doesn't mean speaking without care or dumping feelings recklessly. True honesty is rooted in love. It says, I care about this relationship enough to be real. I trust you enough to show up fully. I respect us enough to have the hard conversations. So while avoidance might feel safer in the short term, it comes at a long-term cost. It costs connection. It costs trust. It costs authenticity. The foundation of a healthy relationship is not perfection. It's presence. And presence requires honesty. To rebuild what distance and silence have stolen, someone has to go first. Someone has to be brave enough to speak. To say, I've been avoiding things, and I don't want to anymore. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's leadership. And that's how connection begins again, not with flawless words, but with honest ones. Connection doesn't happen just because two people love each other. It doesn't sustain itself on good intentions or shared memories. It's built through effort, daily, deliberate, often unglamorous effort. Too many people enter relationships expecting connection to maintain itself, to feel natural all the time, to stay strong without being fed. But like anything living, connection needs care, it needs attention, it needs work. Expectations alone are not enough. Expecting your partner to just know how you feel, expecting things to return to normal after a fight without conversation, expecting intimacy without vulnerability, these are the silent killers of connection. We think that because we once had it, we always will. We believe that because the beginning felt easy, it should always feel easy. But connection at the start of a relationship is chemistry. Connection over time is commitment. The truth is, most of us want to be understood without having to explain ourselves. We want closeness without the discomfort of being honest. We want our needs met without having to be the one who initiates. But connection doesn't respond to wishful thinking. It responds to what you give. The more intentional you are, the deeper it grows. The more passive you are, the faster it fades. Effort doesn't mean constant grand gestures. It means showing up even when you're tired. It means listening with the intent to understand, not just to respond. It means checking in. Not because something is wrong, but because you care. It's choosing to ask how they're really doing, even when the day's been long. It's following through on the little things, the morning coffee, the small hug before leaving, the I'm thinking of you text. These small acts, done consistently, are the bricks that build emotional intimacy. Expectations, on the other hand, often lead to disappointment. When we expect connection to just happen, we overlook how much power we have to create it. We get frustrated when our partner doesn't read our mind, forgetting that real communication happens when we speak honestly, not when we silently hope. We grow resentful when we feel emotionally distant, not realizing that we've been sitting with folded arms, waiting for the other to make a move. There's also a tendency to believe that if we have to try, maybe the connection isn't real. But that's a lie. Real connection requires effort. It requires effort because life gets in the way: stress, work, routines, distractions. Without intention, even the strongest relationships can start to feel hollow. The couples who stay deeply connected over time aren't lucky. They're committed. They're proactive. They're willing to do the work. Sometimes connection means putting down the phone and making eye contact. Sometimes it means apologizing first. Sometimes it means doing something kind even when you're upset. And sometimes it means having the hard conversation when it would be easier to shut down. None of that is passive. All of it is a choice. If you're feeling disconnected from someone you care about, don't ask, why don't they reach out more? Ask, how can I show up better? The moment you shift from expectation to effort, you stop waiting and start building. And building is how you bring connection back to life. Connection is a practice. It's not a gift that stays unwrapped forever. It's something you tend to, like a fire, like a garden, like a friendship. And while it takes energy, the return is worth it. Because when you put in the effort, not only do you deepen the bond, you also grow into the kind of person who knows how to love fully without waiting for permission. In the end, love thrives not where expectation leads, but where effort lives. We often believe that if we mess up in a relationship, we can make it right with one grand apology, a heartfelt speech, an expensive gift, a dramatic gesture. And while those things might bring temporary relief, they don't truly rebuild trust or intimacy. What does? The quiet, consistent daily effort of simply showing up. Because in relationships, small acts of presence speak louder than big acts of apology. Being present doesn't always mean saying the perfect thing or solving every problem. It means being there, fully. It means listening without distractions. It means noticing the moments that matter to the other person and choosing to engage. It's in the good morning text. The way you put your phone down when they start talking. The question you ask at the end of the day. How are you really doing? These may seem like tiny things, but over time, they become the foundation of emotional safety and trust. Apologies are important, yes, but they are only as strong as the behavior that follows them. You can't hurt someone repeatedly and expect a beautiful apology to erase the pain. You can't neglect a relationship for months and then hope that one romantic evening will fix everything. Real healing comes not from saying, I'm sorry, but from proving I've changed. And that proof shows up in the small, steady ways you show you care. Presence means consistency. It means choosing to be emotionally available even when it's inconvenient. It means reaching out even when things feel awkward. It means taking interest in their world, asking about their dreams, their fears, their wins, and their worries. These moments may not be Instagram worthy, but they're where love lives. They're the moments that whisper, you matter, I'm with you. I'm still here. There's a quiet power in presence. You don't need to impress someone every day. You just need to be reliable, to be the person they can count on to show up, not just when things go wrong, but when nothing is happening at all. That's where connection grows, in the mundane, in the in-between, in the ordinary rhythms of life shared together. When we rely too heavily on apology, we unintentionally make emotional absence acceptable, as long as it ends in a grand gesture. But this creates a cycle of neglect, regret, and repair. Over time, that cycle becomes exhausting. And for the person on the receiving end, it begins to feel like love only arrives in waves, when guilt strikes or pressure builds. Presence breaks that cycle. It says, I don't just care when I'm afraid of losing you. I care always. The small acts of presence build something far more lasting than apology ever could. They build trust. They create emotional intimacy. They reduce resentment before it has a chance to grow. A partner who shows up consistently doesn't need to apologize as often because their care is evident every day. Even in conflict, presence matters more than being right. Sitting with someone in silence while they cry. Saying, I don't know what to say, but I'm not going anywhere. These moments don't fix everything, but they create the space for healing to begin. We don't fall in love with apologies. We fall in love with being seen, heard, and valued. And those needs don't go away with time, they only grow deeper. So instead of waiting until you've done something wrong to show up big, start showing up small every day. Pay attention. Be kind. Be thoughtful. Be curious. Because the truth is, you don't need to make up for absence with a grand return. What you need is to make absence a rarity. And you do that not with promises, but with presence. Relationships don't break overnight, they fade, not because of one huge mistake, but because of quiet neglect. Because someone stopped asking, someone stopped showing up, someone assumed that love, once established, would keep itself alive. But love doesn't run on autopilot. It runs on nurture, on attention, on care. And when you stop feeding a relationship, you don't just risk losing closeness. You start competing with everything else in their life. The world is full of noise, deadlines, social media, friends, distractions, opportunities, and every day that noise demands more of us. If you're not intentional, the relationship can start slipping down the list of priorities, not because you don't care, but because everything else feels louder, more urgent. But love isn't urgent until it's slipping away, and by the time it feels like an emergency, it might already be in danger. When someone no longer feels emotionally fed in a relationship, they will begin to search for comfort somewhere else. Sometimes that looks like working longer hours. Sometimes it looks like scrolling mindlessly for hours a night. Sometimes it looks like confiding in a friend about things they used to share with you. And sometimes, tragically, it looks like forming emotional attachments outside the relationship. Not because they're disloyal, not because they stopped loving you, but because they started feeling alone and didn't know how to say it. We tend to think that love, once declared, is understood. That if someone knows you love them, they'll carry that knowledge like a shield against doubt. But love needs reminders. It needs check-ins. It needs attention the way a fire needs tending. Without warmth, even the best connection begins to feel cold. People don't stop needing to be seen just because they've been with someone for years. If anything, the longer the relationship, the more the need to be intentional about staying close. Nurturing a relationship doesn't mean grand romantic gestures. It means being available emotionally. It means asking about their day and actually listening. It means noticing when their energy is off and caring enough to ask why. It means appreciating them out loud, not just in your head. It means initiating affection, celebrating their wins, supporting their struggles. It means choosing them again and again when the world offers you 100 other distractions. The danger in not nurturing a relationship is that you start losing your place in each other's lives, not in name, but in presence. You become just another person in the house, just another voice in the noise. And once that happens, everything else starts looking more appealing. Work feels more fulfilling. Friends feel more supportive. Screens feel more engaging. Not because they're better, but because you stopped being present. People drift when they no longer feel chosen. And choosing someone is not a one-time event. It's a daily decision. You choose them when you pause your work to talk. You choose them when you turn off the phone and make eye contact. You choose them when you ask, "What do you need from me right now?" And when someone feels chosen, the world fades into the background because they already have what they need most. The world will always be competing for our attention. But love is where you place your focus. If you don't invest energy into the relationship, you'll find yourself trying to reclaim something that slipped away while you were busy elsewhere. Don't wait until you're afraid of losing them to start nurturing what you have. Don't assume love stays warm on its own. Feed it. Protect it. Water it. Because if you don't, the relationship won't be competing with another person. It will be competing with everything. And if you're not careful, everything might win. Rebuilding a relationship after distance, conflict, or hurt is not about finding the right strategy. It's about choosing vulnerability. You cannot reconnect while staying guarded. You cannot repair something broken without first opening yourself up to the very thing that hurt you in the first place, emotional risk. And that is what makes rebuilding so difficult. Not the work, but the willingness to be seen without a shield. Most people want connection without the discomfort. We want closeness, but we don't want to be the first to speak. We want healing, but we don't want to be the one who admits fault. We want to move forward, but we're terrified of rejection, of judgment, of saying too much and not hearing what we hope in return. So we wait. We hide behind sarcasm, distractions, half-truths. We protect ourselves with silence and pretend that protecting our ego is the same as protecting our heart. But nothing grows without vulnerability, not love, not trust, not intimacy. Vulnerability is the doorway back to closeness. It's the moment you say, This is how I feel, knowing they might not feel the same. It's saying, I miss you, without knowing if they miss you too. It's being honest when it would be easier to act like nothing's wrong. And it's terrifying because you're handing someone the power to hurt you again, hoping they won't. We avoid vulnerability because we think it makes us weak. We think it means surrender. But in truth, it takes immense strength to reveal what's real. It takes courage to own your mistakes, to admit your needs, to express your fears. It means stepping into uncertainty and saying, I'm willing to try again, even if I don't know how it will turn out. That is not weakness. That is emotional bravery. In relationships, vulnerability is not just about the big conversations. It's in the small things, too. It's choosing to initiate a hug after days of tension. It's saying, I was wrong, instead of, you misunderstood me. It's sending the first message after a fight. It's expressing desire, affection, insecurity. These moments matter more than we realize because they rebuild the bridge one honest plank at a time. You cannot rebuild trust without risk. You cannot rebuild safety without honesty. And you cannot rebuild connection while pretending you don't care. The very thing that makes vulnerability so hard, its uncertainty, is what makes it so powerful. Because when you choose to be vulnerable and the other person meets you there, the connection that forms is real. It's not built on performance. It's built on truth. Of course, vulnerability won't always be met with kindness. That's part of the risk. Sometimes people won't understand you. Sometimes they'll shut down. But even then, you walk away knowing you showed up fully. That's the only thing you control. And that integrity, that willingness to lead with heart, is something no one can take from you. Rebuilding doesn't require perfect words or flawless timing. It requires presence, openness, a willingness to say, let's try again. That invitation, raw, unguarded, is what allows healing to begin. And someone has to go first. Someone has to lower their walls so the other feels safe enough to do the same. Someone has to choose love over pride. So if you're standing at the edge of reconnection, wondering how to begin, start there. With truth, with humility, with the courage to say what you feel, even if your voice shakes. Because while you can't rebuild without vulnerability, the moment you embrace it, you give love a chance to breathe again. And that chance is always worth the risk.